Hello and welcome to my channel. I am Zodiac Bandit, and today we are going to be talking about some spoiler heavy stuff. So if you aren't caught up with campaign 3 yet of Critical Role, best to go get caught up. If you aren't caught up with Critical Role in general, just go get caught up. I know that's a big ask, but spoilers, man. Some people don't like them. Some people will complain. Some people are going to complain about the thumbnail, but that's too bad. Things happen. Sorry. Spoilers. So with the spoiler warning out of the way, we can now move on to the meat of this video, and that is the deals from Nanamori that were made by Chetney and Orym, and the consequences or the potential consequences of them, and potential ways they could get out of it, but mostly the consequences, because consequences are fun to talk about. So let's get into it. We're going to start with Chetney.
What is your passion?
Toys. I want to be the most famous toy maker the world has ever known.
Now that just requires a little bend of fate, doesn't it? And as she extends her hand, you see like this weird golden thread that kind of now draws from your chest. It seems like it drifts into the shadow in both ways. Not towards her. It just kind of pulls from one end of the darkness to the other. And you watch her kind of reach her finger forward and tug on it. As it does, you feel this cold sensation rush through your body. And what will you give me?
Oh. That room we were in before looks like you have a lot of stuff. What would you want?
Bring me a piece of what you hunt. Bring me a piece of the God Eater.
That's such a good ask. I'm not even mad about it. A piece of Predathos.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds impossible.
It does. But you all seem to be on the path to doing the impossible, aren't you?
We are.
Well,
We do some simple arithmetic here. It's a deal.
you watch as she puts her hand over the lantern, and the flame, you realize at this point, it wasn't a yellow fire. It was almost like a colorless flame, like you were sitting in a space of monochrome light. And as she runs her hand over the lantern, the kind of whitish fire kind of carries over into her palm, and she extends it towards you. And as she clasps it, her fingers wrap around it and almost clamp back over her hand with how long they are compared to your tiny, gnomish clasp. As it does, you feel this cold flame touch your palm, and that golden thread, the only source of color in the space, seems to twist and tangle a bit. And she withdraws her hand. Very well. Make me proud. And you be notorious.
Notorious.
The reason I wanted to start with Chetney is because his deal is a lot more straightforward. It is, go get me a piece of the enemy that you're going after on the moon, and then I'll make you the most famous / notorious toy maker in the world or to ever have existed. Now, it's a lot more straightforward and a lot simpler to talk about because everything I just said is the deal. He wants to be the most famous toy maker in the world, but she wants a piece of Predathos or whatever is up there on the moon, and then he'll become the most notorious toy maker ever. That is the key word I want to focus on, though. Notorious. Nanamori says the word notorious right at the end, which isn't favorable. It means you are well known or talked about for something typically negative, which to me is bad. See, the thing with hags is they like to twist and make things all messed up for the person they're making a deal with. The deal is never straightforward. Much like a devil, it's never going to be in favor of the person making the deal. It'll always be in the favor of the devil or the hag. It is much more of a, you ask me something, you get something for a little while, and then eventually I come back and get my whatever I feel is owed to me. So there's actually a very good example of a hag twisting a deal in Baldur's Gate 3. So if you haven't gotten to that point yet in the game, I'm going to timestamp it so you can skip ahead. It should be on the screen right now. This is a reminder to me to put it on the screen right now, and this is me giving you more time so it's a little bit more spaced out. But for those of you who are still here and are still willing to listen to the hag example, we bring ourselves in front of Ethel, the hag in Act 1, and how she was manipulating or necessarily lying to the woman who went for her to help to bring back her dead husband. At the end of the whole mission, it is revealed that she was going to receive her husband back, but in a zombified form and was being controlled by a control rod of sorts. So the deal was twisted in a, less favorable way for the woman who was asking for her husband back. And hopefully I didn't spoil too much for those who still wanted to hear the example. That is a good example of a hag twisting something. She told her one thing and gave her that kind of in a sort of different way. And that's what hags do. So I can imagine this sort of thing happening to Chetney, where Chetney believes he's going to become the most famous, but ends up being the most infamous, becomes the most notorious, and isn't necessarily regarded as Santa Claus, the person who's very good and makes toys and, is a nice person, but is more so resembled as a unfavorable person, someone who is hated for their toys, maybe their toys are evil, whatever. I don't know exactly the specifics, but it seems like her wording of notorious leads it to be more negative than positive, which is not what Chetney wants, but it would make him infamous and well-known, which is kind of what he asked for. So in this instance, she will be fulfilling her end of the deal when he does, bringing whatever piece of Predathos back with him. My big question is, what does this piece of Predathos do for Nana Mori? She's already very powerful. She's able to fight and contend with Soro Lord Zethuda, who is just below Archfey level based on his rankings within the Unseelie Court. So what exactly is this going to do? She's already Archfey level, or at least a little bit around there based on what we know, and she is the Fate Stitcher. She's able to manipulate fate, and she's able to change things into someone's, will or want a little bit. She's able to twist it, But what will this do to her? What will this make her more of a god-level threat? Will it make her a full-on level Archfey? And will she be extraordinarily dangerous? As we already know, she is dangerous with everything at her, disposal as is, with her fate reality shaping magic at her fingertips. What could she do with this power? That, to me, is the big question coming out of Chetney's deal. So how does Chetney get out of this deal? Well, realistically, Chetney doesn't. Chetney is in nowhere near of a negative position as others are when it comes to making these kind of deals. For him, he doesn't really care. I get the feeling that he doesn't care whether he's infamous, famous, notorious, whatever. He doesn't care if he's positive or negative. He doesn't care if he's looked at upon as if he's Santa Claus or if he's Krampus. He just wants to be known. He wants to be known as Chetney Pokapy, whether that's Chetney Pokapy, the werewolf toy maker, or Chetney Pokapy, the great toy maker. He just wants to be known, and because for him, his life is short. I get the feeling that a part of it links back to what he told everyone his initial, deal was going to be, which was for his youth. He wants to sort of become immortal, but not necessarily immortal in the typical way of being there forever. He wants to be known forever. I feel like that is what Chetney's real sort of thing is. He wants to be known by the people of Exandria forever, and to do that, being either famous or infamous, in his mind is the way to do it. So I feel like just giving Nana Mori the piece of Predathos is the best option for him, because otherwise he just doesn't get anything. If he doesn't get her the piece because the piece was never available, I don't know if necessarily if she's able to, act upon her end. I don't know if she'll be able to, if the deal wasn't even possible, because that was part of it. They both mentioned how it's somewhat impossible. It's a good ask, but impossible. So realistically, it's kind of hard for Chetney to do this without A, being noticed by the rest of them, and B, what if Predathos isn't even released? The piece of him is not going to be available. So realistically, Nana Mori either doesn't get the chance to do anything with this or get something out of it. And I feel like for her, that 50-50 is pretty good. And that 50-50 is also really good for Chetney, because either nothing happens or the deal goes through. And I feel like it's positive overall, because Chetney doesn't care if it's a negative outcome on his perception of fame or infamy.
Your passion is to protect your friends, yes?
My friends? Your granddaughter? I don't know if there's a friends and family discount, but...
And What do you have to offer, little Ashari?
Well, if I see them all through, and we get it done, I'll serve you. These have to be worded just right. Imogen said, that's if we see it through. Everyone at Bell's Hells makes it back. And we see it through. That's an easy trade.
Every one of you makes it back. And you see this through.
Back alive. Happy, safe, and healthy.
Well, you have to start happy to return happy. And I think health is in varying states. Return at least as you are.
Return alive.
Very well.
So we're moving on to Orym's deal now, and Orym's deal seems rather surface level as well. Simple and clean, it's nice, and just, everyone comes back, I become a servant of yours. It seems simple on the surface, but the wording is exact, and that wording is everyone comes back as they are now, which means everyone who leaves the Ligament Manor in this moment has to return to the material plane from Ruidus the same way they were at the Ligament Manor, which is difficult for many reasons. There's many characters who are going to get in the way of this. First and foremost, we have Laudna, who's at a disadvantage. She could be at any point in time taken over by Delilah, in which case this deal could end. So realistically, there's so many ways that this deal could end before it even gets started. First of all, Laudna, like I mentioned. Second of all, Imogen, if she were to fall and join Predathos, this deal doesn't go through, because now she's not going to be there. The party will not return as is when they're at the Ligament Manor. The next one is, what if someone were to die? And that seems to be the general consensus, that Orym is 100% willing to make the sacrifice play here. Now, I feel like this is where Nanamorian is going to be able to find a loophole in the deal. If everyone else returns safe and sound from the moon except for Orym, I feel like there's enough fate twisting in Nanamori's capabilities that she'll be able to pluck him from the Raven Queen's grasp and bring him back to the Ligament Manor, and then bam, he's now stuck in the Ligament Manor as some sort of servant. Now, what happens if Orym does, in fact, go through with all this? Everyone makes it back. He's either, everyone makes it back alive, or he's, dead and plucked out of the grasp of the Raven Queen, like I mentioned before, and now bam, the deal has gone through. What happens next? Well, there's two things that could happen. One, he is literally a servant of Nanamori, a protector of the Ligament Manor, and will wait on her hand and foot. Or, and what I think is the more likely and more interesting and more, cool parallel, would be he becomes the protector of Fern. Throughout this campaign, there's been many times where Orym has sort of slipped into the role that Derek had before, that of being the protector of the Tempest, a very powerful archdruid, and I think it would be a nice parallel for Orym to sort of fall in that position, but not for Keyleth, but instead for Fern. I feel like that would be a lot cooler, and the two of them could have a bunch of cool adventures in the Fey Realm. The vibe that I get from Fern is once this is all over, she wants to go to the Fey Realm and truly explore it, because her entire life she was stuck in the Ligament Manor. She wasn't able to go around and explore anything else besides the Ligament Manor. So for her to be able to go with her best friend and a person she's cared about for a long time since EXU days, she would love that. She would love for the two of them to be able to go wherever they wanted to in the Fey Realm. And if Nanamori has Orym as a servant, he is now obligated to protect Fern, because Fern seemingly is going to choose to stay with Nanamori. Now, of course, Fern could make many other choices. She could stay in the material plane with the Bell's House for forever, and that'll just put Orym there. But that seems like a nothing sort of punishment for this sort of deal going through. So I feel like it makes more sense, based on what we know about Fern, that she would like to go home. There's been many points in her story during this campaign where going home back to the Ligament Manor is like a comfort place. Going back there and living life afterwards seems like a very strong and possible option for her. So I would love to see this outcome where everything goes through with this deal, and then Nana Mori seeing that her, effectively, the person she raised, her daughter in this moment, is needing of a protector and a friend. And I feel like that would be a nice way to sort of round out every character here. Orym would end up in the position that he belongs to be in, which is that of a protector of an archdruid. And then Fern has her best friend with her, which I think is massive. And I feel like that is something that Nana Mori would absolutely do. So there you have it. Both of these deals on the surface feel very simple and very straightforward, but they both have a lot of underlying context to them, which I think is very fun and very cool. I like both potential outcomes here of whether Chetney is either famous or infamous. I like that idea because Chetney doesn't give a shit. Chetney, in my opinion, just wants to be known forever. And I feel like this deal was going to be the best outcome for him. Now, the best outcome for Orym in his mind is potentially going back to Zephyra. But with this deal and the potentials of it, I feel like it's more likely that he ends up going and serving, like he actually planned on the deal. That being said, there are so many ways that he can get out of this deal, like Imogen, Laudna, himself, whether one of them falls or one of them becomes, taken over by the people or their patron. I think there's so many end game or ending parameters for Orym's deal that it's like a 50-50 if it goes through. I feel like Chetney's is very good to go through, and he's likely going to get a piece of Predathos to give to Nana Mori. So that one I feel like is positive. Like, it's going to go through and it's going to happen, whether it's negative or positive for Chetney or his reputation, which, again, he doesn't care. But for Orym, his feels a lot more in jeopardy of whether the deal is even going to get off the ground. Will Imogen turn and sort of be corrupted by Predathos and then stay on the moon away from the party? Thus, when they return, they won't have that option and not the entire party returned as they were. Or will Laudna be taken over by Delilah, and then yet again they won't all return the same as they were, so the deal can't go through, which to me seems incredibly likely. So I feel like Orym is kind of safe. Whether it's he ends up being a servant, he is definitely going to end up in that protector role for Fern, or even for Nana Mori. She doesn't seem that bad. Granted, we've only seen her with Fern, which would mean that there's a positive sort of thing going on with her in her life. But yeah, I just feel like anything that happens for Orym is kind of positive. Whether he stays in Zephyra because the deal didn't go through, yes, that means one of their friends is lost somewhere along the way. But at the end of the day, it seems more positive that way if the deal doesn't go through. Whether or not they're able to change Laudna back or Imogen back, it still seems better off than just being left to servitude for forever. Because again, Nana Mori can fuck with time. So her punishment or Orym's punishment could be forever, and he wouldn't really know. He would just be sort of existing. So yeah, who knows? I think there's a bunch of cool outcomes with this, and it's a very fun conversation. So let me know what you guys think down below. What do you think is going to happen to Chetney and to Orym? And yeah, I will see you guys on Monday for whatever video I make next. Peace.